Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here, coming at you with another trail tip, and I want to talk to you about serial numbers. If you ask the vast majority of people what the serial number is on something that they own, they're going to have to pick it up and look at it. But I think it's important that you keep a record of the serial numbers of every durable good that has one that you own. If nothing else, for insurance purposes, if you're, and I don't wish this on anybody, but if you happen to go through a major catastrophe like your house burns down, or a flood, or a wildfire, or a tornado, or hurricane wipes you out, having access to serial numbers can be a great access to getting you back on your feet with your insurance company. Instead of simply saying, well, I own something, but I don't know what it was worth. Or I own this, but I can't prove that I did because I don't have a record of it. Now, some people will take a receipt, stick it in a drawer, put it in an envelope, or put it in a safe. But what happens if you lose that record? Paper copies are great because these are the originals. These are your best defense if you ever go to court over ownership of something. You can pull out a piece of paper and say, here is my original receipt. And that's the most important document that you can have. But remember that these are still more transient than anything. What happens if you keep the receipts for your firearms in your gun safe? And somebody gets into your gun safe and takes your receipts as well. Okay? Now how are you going to prove it? Well, you could say, well, I bought that firearm at Bob's Guns, and I can go down and ask Bob for a copy of it. But why go through the hassle? Why not have your original receipts, and then also keep track of all of your make, model, and serial numbers separately? Here's what I do. And I've been doing this for almost 45 years now. Every time I purchase something, I get out, and I originally did this manually in a book, and I write down the make, model, serial number, as well as where on the product the serial number is located. And I did that for years. I couldn't do it on a computer because 45 years ago, I didn't own a computer. There was no such thing as a PC. Now, when I got a computer, I started keeping it on a spreadsheet. And it was very simple to do. Whenever I bought something, I came home, unboxed it, made sure it worked. I put the receipt in my fire safe, but I also scanned it in and made a digital copy. Then I would open up the spreadsheet, and it says I bought this make and model, serial number, as well as where on the product the serial number is located. Now, it's important to have that where on the product is located because sometimes serial numbers are so small and so obscure that they're impossible to spot. So if you have it written down where that serial number is, it's going to be a whole lot faster to find it because somebody's going to pick up a firearm and look it over and say, man, I'm just not seeing a serial number. Right there is where it is. And I covered it up so I don't disclose it. But having that information, being able to, no matter what the circumstance is, have access to it. Now what I do is I keep my spreadsheet in my Dropbox account. And it's an online file sharing program. That means if I buy something, this is my latest purchase. When I got it, I came home, I made a copy of the receipt. It now resides on my Dropbox account, as well as I put it in this spreadsheet. I purchased a Winchester 1873, and here is the serial number, and here is where on this firearm it is located at. When I save it, it saves it on my Dropbox account, and that is accessible to any electronic device that's got internet connection. I can access it with my phone, my tablets, my laptop, my desktop. If I had to, I could walk into like a FedEx office, pay a little bit of money, log on with one of their computers, and get that information. Now, if you want to go to that extreme, that's fine. If not, it's up to you. How you want to handle this information is fine. It's up to you. But just remember that the more ways you make it accessible, the better off you'll be. I have heard of cases where somebody, let's say, had their house broken into, they got into their gun safe, they stole some firearms, they've got on Craigslist, and, oh, here's my firearm. Or they've gone to a gun show. Man, I've got one of those. That is mine. I know, because I recognize this scratch or this dent or whatever. That still doesn't prove it's yours. That serial number. Because I've heard of cases of people going like to a gun show, and they have a copy of their receipt, and they have the police report where they have, this stuff was stolen, make, model, serial number, and there's their firearm. And the one story I did hear was the police said, "Oh, you're right. This is yours. Here you go." And then they go after the seller. You get your gun back right away. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen in every case. They might want to keep it to do some testing to see if it's ever used in a crime. They may want to run some ballistics on it. So that's why it's important to keep this information and have it accessible. Because, if something bad happens, let's say my house burns down. Well, Mr. Insurance Agent, here's the stuff I owned, and I can email this to you. And there's the value of everything. I also keep track of what I paid for this stuff too. I forgot to mention that. I forgot, I paid so much for this. So make, model, serial number, where I purchased it, when I purchased it, how much I paid for it, and where on the product that serial number is written. Now, this may sound like a daunting task if you have a whole lot of stuff. I get that. But if every time you take a moment and says, you know what? This lens has a serial number. This camera has a serial number. I don't know if the grip has a serial number, but I'm going to take the time to find out and write those down. So I'm going to write down this lens. I'm going to write down this camera. I purchased it here. I think I paid this. If you don't have the original receipt. And here's the serial numbers. And add that to your list. And eventually, before you know it, you're going to have all this information collected. So you're going to get to the point that I am. I have all this information now. And I do maintain it. Now, this was my latest firearms purchase. About 4 or 5 months ago, I got this. When I got it, of course, I came home. I played around with it, made sure it worked, took it to the range. But then one of the things before sunset is I got my list out and I put it on the computer. Make, model, serial number. I purchased it here, how much I paid for it, the date I got it, serial number, and where it is on the firearm. So that is now within minutes. By the end of the day, I had it available to me on all my platforms. So, and one thing about firearms, and I will say this, it's important to, when you sell a firearm, to make a bill of sale. The reason you want to do that is, once you sell a firearm, it's no longer in your control. Now, you may sell it to somebody you trust, but that doesn't mean something nefarious can happen with that firearm. That person may have their house broken into, and somebody steals that gun, and it ends up being found in a crime scene, and they trace it up to you. You can say, well, here's my receipt, I sold it. Yeah, again, these are all scanned in, and I have copies of those on my Dropbox account. I know it sounds like a lot of work, and you may never have to use this, but wouldn't it be nice to go to bed every night thinking, if something happens, at least I can have access to that information. So start writing these things down if you haven't. If you have, continue to do so. Make sure it's always up to date. Whenever you buy something, make it a point to go through and record this and put it into your system, whatever system you're using to keep track of all this. Even if it is just a book that you write all this stuff down. Make sure that you start it, maintain it, keep it current. Now, I'm not really big on, if I sell something, that I take it off the list. I don't immediately go there. I may come across, oh yeah, I sold that like 2 years ago, and delete it. That's not a big deal. But especially, well, I don't do that with firearms. But if I sell like a camera or something, I don't have any need to keep that record, because the police aren't going to come back and say, well, we caught somebody taking pictures with a camera and we've traced it to you. But a firearm is a little bit different. You definitely want to keep all your records if you want to sell. And personally, I will not sell a firearm to somebody without making a bill of sale and meeting with the person. Obviously, you have to anyway. I mean, I can't mail somebody a firearm, send it through the mail for a sale. But I also verify that they have a permit. I don't go through a background check. I'm not required to. By law where I live, I can sell a firearm to anybody with no records. But my personal opinion is I want to see their permit, and I'm going to make a bill of sale, because that way, once that firearm is out of my hands, I'm covered. In case the police, in case that firearm is used in the commission of a crime and they finally trace it back to me, I could say, well, I sold it to so-and-so 2 years ago. And there's my proof. So, start making a record if you don't already have. Maintain those records, and if you have, keep them up to date. That way you can go to bed knowing that you're covered in those situations. So I'm going to wrap this video up. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share my videos. This is Backpack Cat coming at you with this trail tip. Be safe out there, and I'll see you out there on the trail.